And yes, a big warm welcome to Paula. I'm very excited about today's session, I must say. I love this topic, how to make and be the difference at work. I think this is something that all of us are looking forward to today. So yeah, very excited and glad to be able to be here and able to facilitate this session too. So it's a bit different to our tools and techniques that we usually have. But yes, just a warm welcome from the Durban region of South Africa to Paula. We really are privileged to have you on our session today. So thank you very much. And yeah, for those who are joining from all over, welcome. I don't know if it's morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, but very warm welcome to everybody. So this is the first of our master classes, and Paula is going to be hosting it for us tonight. Please, it's an interactive session. So if you want to put your hand up or say anything, let us know and we will unmute you. It's about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how many questions come through and how interactive all of you are. So yes, there you go. Let me show a face to a name. But just some things just before we get started. Some quick rules and bits with tonight's session. As I said, it's an hour and a half long. We'll take questions throughout the session. We won't wait till the end, so just put your hand up or put it in there and we'll be monitoring the chat. The recording will be shared with everybody, so you will have access to that. You'll get the recording in the email that will follow up. There will be CDUs earned, and I'll put in a key for those of you who are obviously members and can earn CDUs. I will share that key with you and you can get those CDUs. And then also just for our next event, if you want to attend any of our tools and techniques or upcoming masterclasses too, again, I'll share those in the chat with you. But yeah, it's IIBA sawildapricot.org/events. And then also if you'd like to be a Paula and attend or present at one of our next sessions too, whether it's just a tools and techniques one or a masterclass, please contact us at Durban at South Africa. Oh, sorry, I've just got Durban at southafrica.iib.org. And then most importantly, for those obviously who are members tonight, you got to hear Paula, which is great. For those of you non-members, I encourage you to become members of the IIBA. There's so much available for everybody there. There's libraries, there's certifications. So yeah, that I hope it encourages you, and I hope Paula's talk encourages you tonight. So I'd just like to introduce Paula herself, the BA martial artist. Paula is a certified business analyst, as many of us are business analysts. Paula's certified. She's a master life coach. She's also a certified diversity and inclusion manager and coach, and also a career development coach. And she's got over 20 years of experience of working in corporate America and very varied project roles and industries. And in addition to those 20 years, for the last 21 years, Paula has been successful in running her own consulting business that focuses on mind, body, and soul. So she's really got a passion to inspire, motivate, and encourage others holistically. And that's what I'm really looking forward to tonight. And what she does is she leverages those martial arts concepts, hence the alias BA martial artist. So yeah, I think today is really going to be a great session. I'm really looking forward to today's session. So yes, over to you, Paula.
Well, no pressure. No pressure at all. All right, let's switch up screens here. Hopefully you see my screen right now. You should see a slide.
Yes, we do.
Perfect. So I'm actually going to go off video. As many of you know, if you do Zoom calls, the video will pull quite a bit. So I'm going to I'll go off video, and as questions are asked, and I will come back on. So I'll be going in between. But I see we already have a hand raised. So I just wanted to make sure that if there is a question, it gets answered before we jump in. Do we have anything out there, Ruth? Or are we good?
Ola has a hand up. Is it down again?
I see it down, so maybe it was by accident. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. Well, first, I would like to thank you for having me for this masterclass. I am truly honored. Again, when I was in South Africa a few years ago, it was probably a milestone, a huge milestone in my speaking career. And I just enjoyed the environment, the people. I miss it. I'm going to be back. I do have plans to travel back to South Africa at some point. I don't know when, but I do plan to be back because I do miss it. I miss the people, and I just miss everything that I experienced while I was there. And I did have the opportunity to visit Durban briefly while I was there as well. I did a workshop there and I had a wonderful time and met some amazing and wonderful people that are probably on this phone call, this conference call right now. So thank you so much for that. And third, my hope is that you leave this session with some concepts that you can immediately apply to be that change you desire to see in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is an interactive session. So throughout the session, I'm going to be asking questions. We're going to show some videos. We're going to have some discussion. The one thing I would like to ask is that you take a moment to take a nice deep breath and get into that Zen moment, because there's going to be some self-introspection and you're going to have to be honest with yourself. In order for diversity and inclusion and equity to work, first starts with you. So you're going to have to be honest with yourself in some of the areas where you might struggle in these concepts. So just be open to that. I'll probably share some of my own personal stories of where I've struggled as well. So moving on to the agenda, we're going to talk about some terms around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Just want to make sure everybody is level set, because there are many times where terms are not used correctly or are misunderstood. So I want to level set on that. The first concept we're going to talk about is getting comfortable being comfortable. And I will share a process that I have created based on the experiences that I've had on my own journey of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I will share that process with you. We're going to talk about micro-inequities, which is another topic that I do love to talk about, how something so small can be so powerful. We're going to talk about bias. We're going to talk a little bit about conscious, but mainly unconscious bias, which is that bias that sometimes creeps up on us that we don't like. We're going to briefly touch on what intercultural competence is and why it's important for the diversity, equity, and inclusion journey, and then we're going to wrap up. Again, we will do some group discussions. We'll watch some videos as long as Zoom cooperates with me. And you'll have opportunity throughout the entire presentation to ask questions. And I will be honest with you, if I don't have an answer for a question, I'm going to tell you I don't know, but I will get back to you with that answer. So let's first kick it off with some terms. So the first term is diversity. And diversity is the quality or state of having many different forms, types, or ideas. The state of having people who are different races or who have different cultures in a group or organization. However, diversity is not just about race. A lot of people, when they hear the word diversity, that's where they immediately go. There are many dimensions and layers to diversity. You have diversity of thought, diversity of skill, diversity of gender, diversity of age. There's many layers to diversity. So in the context of this masterclass, I want us to think of diversity more than just race. It's all of those different layers and dimensions. Then the next term is equity, and that's the quality of being fair and impartial. Now, equity is not the same as equality, because equality is the state of being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. What I love about equity is that equity is just about being fair. Everybody should have the same opportunities, regardless of your diversity makeup. Equality is a little bit harder to achieve because that is more on the standpoint of being equal. And I don't know if we'll ever get to full equality because there are so many factors that play into it. But we can definitely get to a point of being equitable, being fair amongst us all. Inclusion, that is the action or state of including or being included within a group or structure. And frankly, I personally think this is the most important part of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can embrace a person's difference and you can be fair, but if a person doesn't feel that they are valued or included, you're going to lose them because they're going to wonder, why am I even here? Why do I exist? And that's not what you want. So I found a lot of organizations spend a lot of time on the diversity aspect, embracing, but not as much time as fostering that culture of inclusion, which is really, really important. Then you have the term of prejudice, which is an opinion or prejudgment or attitude about a group or its individual members. Interestingly enough, a prejudice can be positive, but also can be negative. So you could have a prejudice where it has a positive consequence or impact on the individual or groups that you're prejudiced toward, but then it could also have a negative. And in most cases, most of us know it as a negative connotation. Then there's discrimination, which is the practice of unfairly treating a person or a group of people differently from other groups of people. And so your prejudice is your prejudgment. Your discrimination is actually unfairly treating people. That's the difference between those two words. And then you also have stereotypes, which is some sort of exaggerated belief or image or distorted truth about a person or a group. And these generalizations sometimes come from how you were brought up as a child, or your belief system, or your experiences that you've had on life's journey. Again, stereotypes, just like prejudice, can be positive or negative depending on the perspective that you take. Then you have unconscious bias, which is defined as our implicit bias. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more. And these are people's preferences formed by socialization, our experiences, our exposures to others, our beliefs, our views about certain groups of people. And then we have cultural competence, which we'll talk about a little bit at the ending of this masterclass. And that's defined as a set of congruent behaviors, attitudes, and policies that come together in some sort of system. So it's really understanding, being competent enough to understand your culture and others' cultures at a deeper level, not staying at the surface, just around the food you eat and the music you listen to, but going a little bit deeper by understanding the beliefs and the reason those particular cultures or your cultures behave in the way in which they do. And we'll get into that a little bit. So before I move on, I just want to make sure, are there any questions about these terms? These are not all of the diversity terms by any means, but these are a few that I want to call out because they're probably going to come out throughout the masterclass. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I will continue on. So let's move forward with our first concept, which is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So the word discomfort, right, means to feel uneasy or anxious or embarrassed. And there are many things that make people feel this sort of discomfort. The many different sort of reasons a person could feel discomfort. It could be they could feel discomfort towards certain individuals that aren't like them. So if you encounter a certain environment where people are really, really different, you get uncomfortable in that environment. You might get uncomfortable with people who believe differently than you. If you have a certain belief system and you are really adamant that that belief system is the end all be all belief system, and other people don't, and you're in an environment where that's very well known, you could be very uncomfortable. You could have discomfort or be uncomfortable in certain environments. Like I just mentioned above, there are certain environments you thrive in, and then there's others that you don't. You could have some discomfort based on behaviors that you've learned in your childhood. So maybe you were raised to think a certain way or behave a certain way. And if you're in an environment where people don't behave the same way or react the same way, you're uncomfortable with that. You could be uncomfortable based on different journeys you've experienced in your life. So if you had a traumatic experience and a certain environment or certain communication or certain individuals trigger that traumatic experience, that can make you uncomfortable. You could also be uncomfortable when people might have different perspectives than you, when you feel that you're the expert, but then someone comes with something different, but you're supposed to be the expert. So I don't feel very comfortable with that, right? The point here is that we are all different. We think different, we behave different, we believe differently, and there's going to be times where we're just going to be uncomfortable due to that. And so throughout my life, I've been uncomfortable, especially going through diversity and equity and inclusion conversations. Some of them have been very uncomfortable. And 2020 was probably one of the years I was most uncomfortable because I had my own beliefs and my own feelings. And I was then seeing some people for who they really were and what they really believed, which shocked me. And so now my thinking of them and how I reacted around them changed. So that was a point where I actually had to use my own process I created, because this is a journey. This is an iterative process. There are times when you're doing great with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then there are times when you're not. You have to step back and you have to reevaluate yourself. This was the time I had to step back and reevaluate myself. And I created this process years ago when I actually had a situation when I moved from the East Coast to where I live now in Iowa in 2006. I had an issue with people of color, specifically Black people. And this is why. I had gone through some situations in life where my interaction with my own culture didn't go very well. And I started to have my own prejudices and stereotypes and discriminatory thoughts towards my own culture. I'm keeping it real. And it was because of things that I had experienced. And I got to the point where I didn't even want to interact with my own culture, with my own people, with my own race. I pretty much shut down, didn't want to have anything to do with them. And there was a level of discomfort because I felt that I was a traitor, I was a sellout, because I was having these thoughts and these feelings and behaving a certain way. And it was all because of some things that I went through that were traumatic. And I equated that trauma to race where I shouldn't have. And the way I got out of that was somebody actually had asked me to join the team member network group within the company that was related to Black African American team members. And so, again, I still wasn't comfortable being around my own. So I had to get to that comfort level. The first thing I had to do was some self-reflection. So I had to figure out what was going on with me because I'm the problem. The next thing I had to do, I did some research actually on some of the beliefs and thoughts that I had and why I might have those thoughts, because I had to get myself together. I had to listen to others and actively listen, not just listen to respond, but really truly listen to understand. I had to listen to what was going on within myself, but also the perspectives from others on why I got into that point. I had to take some action. That action wasn't easy. And then I shared my own truth, because this was a process for me. And you probably have heard me say this before, your test is your testimony. And when you start sharing your testimony, you're starting to help other people, inspire other people, motivate and encourage other people. And though that was a dark part in my life and not one that I'm the proudest of, I still share that story because it shows that I am human as well. And I do actually have my own struggles and challenges as I go through my diversity, equity, and inclusion journey. Now, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. This is iterative. It takes time. You're not just going to change overnight. These are some deep-rooted introspection, deep-rooted beliefs and things that you have to go through. So this takes time. Don't be hard on yourself. Don't give yourself a hard time. Don't beat yourself up. Just realize where you are and then make the changes to make it happen. So let's go through each of these steps a little bit deeper. So the first step I said was around self-reflection. So what I had to do is I had to be honest with myself on where was this sort of prejudice, discrimination, and stereotypical behavior coming from. And this was a very personal thing for me. Nobody had to know about it. Nobody ever has to know about it unless you want to share it. But this is just you having a conversation with you. And if you can't be honest with yourself, I don't know who you can't be honest with. So you should be able to start with yourself and really think through, why do I feel the way I feel? The next thing is determine where you are currently. And so this is a point of transparency. Even if you find things about yourself that you don't like, don't shy away from it. You have to be honest with yourself and attack it head on to determine what is causing your behaviors or your actions, what's causing the feelings that you have, the beliefs that you have. You have to determine what makes you uncomfortable. And you have to determine why it makes you uncomfortable. I had to go back and figure out, why is it that I'm having such an issue with my own race, with my own culture? And it went back for over a few years. It wasn't just something that I just woke up one day and said I had a problem. It was things that I had experienced that I never dealt with. So there was trauma that I had. I never dealt with it. And because I didn't deal with it, I started to put up these walls to where people couldn't get in. And it was really myself making this an issue. It didn't have anything to do with anybody else. It really had everything to do with me. And so I had to determine how I got to that point and why I was uncomfortable. And then I also had to identify where my unconscious biases were. We're going to go deeper in unconscious bias, but I did have some bias as well. And I had to identify that. Now, as I went through this step, as well as I went through some self-reflection, there's nothing wrong for asking for help, asking for feedback from others, from people that mentor you, your close confidants as you go through this journey. Sometimes we have blinders on so hard that we don't see, and we need other people to call us out. We need other people to hold us accountable, and we need other people to be honest with us so that we can be honest with ourselves. And you have to be open to that feedback. So you need to really find somebody that you know you will listen to and that you will take their feedback and know it's out of love. It's not out of being mean or anything. It's out of love. And that's what you want. That's the only way you're going to make that change. Now, the next thing I had to do is I had to do some research. I had to educate myself on some things. First of all, I had to make sure that where I was finding information on some of the feelings I was feeling, on some of the things that I was going through, that the research was credible. Okay, you can't go off of everything you read on the internet or whatnot. Sometimes you just need therapy too. So you need to talk to somebody who's credible, who has the credentials to help you through some of those things. But I educated myself on a couple of things. I educated myself on why I was feeling the way I was. I educated myself on some of the issues that I had. I educated myself on some of the trauma I went through and what I was supposed to be doing with that trauma. Instead of holding it in, I needed to let it out. But what's a healthy way of letting it out? So I had to educate myself. And then I had to interact with others. And we'll go deeper with that in the next step. But I had to interact with others. I had to talk to other people. I wanted to understand other people's perspectives as well. And I talked to people of different age groups. Because what I find is our elderly, our older population has a ton of wisdom of things that they've experienced that we may never experience. But they have so much wisdom that they can give them. So don't discount our elderly. But I also talk to people who are younger than me and people who are around the same age. Perspective is really interesting when you get those different genders, the different age groups of them giving you different ways to look at things and different perspectives on things. So I actually had some conversations with some people who are close to me around what I was going through and how I felt. And I got some great words of wisdom that helped me through the process. And I learned a lot from others as well. And it really did make me go back to step one, that introspection, and really look within myself to figure out where I needed to make some changes. Now, step 3 is really important. And this is the listening piece. And if some of you follow me, you've probably seen me say this a million times as well. Listen to understand, not to respond. That is extremely important because a lot of times we are listening, but we're not listening enough to what's going on because we're getting ready to give what that response is going to be to whatever is being said. But sometimes there's so much power in silence. When you're just silent and you just actively listen to someone and hear what they have to say, you actually pick up on things that you probably wouldn't have picked up on before. You pay attention to things that you probably wouldn't have paid attention to before. And then to even take it a step further, when you're done listening, paraphrase what you think you just heard so that you're clear on the understanding and that you're clear on what's being communicated to you. And you do all of this with no judgment, whether you agree or disagree with the person or what environment you're in. At this point, it's not about you. It's about the other person. But because you're making it about the other person, you're going to become stronger for it because you're going to hear things. So you want to, again, listen to understand, not to respond. This is active listening. You definitely want to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Just be silent for a minute. Sometimes that's really hard for us to do, but just be silent for a minute and listen to what the other person is saying, because you might just find out something that you didn't know that you thought you knew. And then acknowledge others' realities and truths. This was something I talked about a lot in 2020. As many of you know, we had a ton going on in the United States in 2020 and across the globe, right? We had the pandemic, we had civil unrest, we had financial issues, everything you could think of hit in that year. And what I was realizing is people spent more time arguing and debating especially on social media, than listening and acknowledging other people's reality. And just because it's not your reality doesn't mean it doesn't exist or it's not somebody's reality to them. So acknowledge the other person's reality, even if you can't understand it, even if you can't fathom it, even if you can't really wrap your head around it because you just can't believe that's something somebody would go through, but it's really real for that other person. So give them the courtesy and the respect to at least acknowledge their reality and their truth, whether you agree with it or not. It makes a ton of difference. And then do not deflect the topic to make yourself more comfortable. I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. About 10 years or so back, when I worked for Wells Fargo, I was invited to join a technology group diversity discussion. And it was around an article that Bill Cosby had written at the time. And the article was geared towards the Black African American community. And essentially, it was pretty much him giving advice and talking through the plight of, look, we need to get educated. You all need to go to college. You need to do the right things, make the right choices and things of that nature. So he was very much talking about some of the struggles that have happened with the Black African American community up to that point. And so they had asked me to speak on it, being a Black African American female, and to give my thoughts. So I read the article and I was giving my thoughts. And there was a Caucasian female from HR who said, in response to one of my comments, well, that could be for any race, which is true. It could have been for any race, but that wasn't the conversation at hand. The conversation at hand was trying to understand what it's like to be a Black African American male or female at that point in time. What does that feel like? Just walk in our shoes. But she tried to deflect it, which to me diminished what I was saying, which irritated me. Diminished what I was saying so that you could bring yourself into the conversation. The conversation isn't even about you. The conversation is about you understanding our point of view. That little bit, just that one sentence, that one sentence said to me that what I said was diminished and you had to be a part of it, even though you're not a part of it. You're not actually a part of it. And you're not really taking the time to understand what it's like. You're trying to find similarities in something that we're not even talking similarities about. And so it's really important that when you have diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations, don't try and switch up the conversation to either make yourself comfortable or to be a part of it when that's not the point of the conversation, right? That's one part of getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. Be uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, stay there and then figure out why you're uncomfortable. Don't try and swindle your way into getting comfortable because that's not what the point of the conversation is. And then as we move on to step 4, this is all about taking action. So what you want to do is you want to identify actions you can take to grow from your discomfort. So you've done this reflection, you've done this research, you've listened to other people, you've asked for help, you've acknowledged others' perspectives, you've done all of this work. Now you bring it all back, just like we do as business analysts, right? We got all the information now, we bring it all back, and now it's time to take action. It's time to write down what actions you are going to take to put yourself in a better place. And again, this is very personable. It's per each person. So everybody has their own goals, but you want to determine what that is. And then you want to make a conscious effort to identify where you are uncomfortable. So when you identify your discomfort and when you know what your discomfort is, when you are in other environment, situation, scenario, you have an acknowledgement of it. And then you know what you're going to do when it creeps up on you. Oh, I don't feel comfortable in this. And this has happened before. But hey, I went through this 5-step process that Paula talked about. And so I know what my plan is, and this is how I'm going to respond to that. Then you wanted to make the discomfort about you and not the other person, because it's really not about the other person. It's about you. You're the one who's uncomfortable. The other person might have done nothing but just walked into a room, and all of a sudden you're uncomfortable. It's not their fault they walked into the room. You have to figure out why you are have this discomfort, why you are uncomfortable. Again, it's all about you. So at this point, it is about you and not the other person. And then lastly, you want to tell your truth. I've found that when you tell your story and when you share what you've been through, other people then, because you're being vulnerable, very vulnerable, other people then will be vulnerable and want to share with you too. And then from that, you get to hear another person's journey and you get to grow from that journey. So when you share yours, they'll share theirs. And then imagine the amount of knowledge and imagine the amount of growth you get from that. And imagine the things that you can consider as you're working with stakeholders and other individuals as you do projects, or if you're in management and you have a team that you lead, or in a leadership role and you're leading, and you begin to understand why certain individuals behave a certain way or act a certain way. Imagine the power that brings to how you lead and how you manage, in addition to how your team stays cohesive and works together and how the people on your team feel valued. It makes a difference. Sometimes you have to be vulnerable for other people to be vulnerable. And then make sure when you are sharing your knowledge, share it without judgment. It's not about judging other people. It's not about pushing out your chest, making sure you are the one who's the expert. It's not always about you. Sometimes it is about you, but it's not always about you. So make sure that when you do share the knowledge that you have, when you tell your truth, when you share your journey, and when others are sharing theirs, you allow it without judgment, because that judgment will shut people down, and that's not what you want. The more you do this, the easier it gets. The more I do it, the easier it gets. It was really hard for me at first, but as I've continued to talk about, as I continue to be vulnerable, as I continue to tell my story, and I will be 100% real with you all. When I was the keynote, I believe it was in 2019 in South Africa, I had no intention of sharing the story that I shared when I was there, when I did my keynote. I decided to do that the night before because I felt that in order to really demonstrate how you lead yourself in order to lead others, I had to be vulnerable. And South Africa was one of the first groups I ever shared that with, where I shared some of the things that I went through in my life that was traumatic. But it was so freeing once I did it. That was such a freeing experience for me. And the impact that I had with others was great. And we can do that every single day. We can have that impact every single day by just how we interact with each other. We do have work to do. We have business to handle. We have things to take care of. How you interact with each other, the impact you can have on someone's life is truly amazing just by having a 5-minute, 10-minute conversation with them. So just don't forget that. That's just as important as getting the work done. So I want to do a group exercise because this is where I'm going to need some feedback and some engagement from you all. Okay. So let's talk about a little bit about getting uncomfortable, being uncomfortable. I'm gonna give you 2 scenarios and I want some feedback on how you will handle these scenarios. So scenario 1, you are in a meeting and you overhear 2 of your coworkers talking about how long it takes one of their business partners to articulate his thoughts. This particular business partner has a speech impediment where he stutters. What would you do? You can hit me up in the chat, or you can just raise your hand, get off mute and talk. But I need some sort of interaction here. What would you do in this situation? All right, wait, I just saw a hand go up and then I missed it.
Any hands? Just unmute yourself if you've got a hand up.
You don't be shy. We're all family.
Yes.
Come on, everyone. We're all family. It gives me a minute to drink some water too. What would you do? You're in a meeting, you overhear 2 of your coworkers talking about how long it takes a business partner who has a stuttering problem to respond in a meeting. What would you do? Because remember, you want to be the change. So you want to make him be that change. So I would think that everybody would agree this isn't right? Talking about somebody else. What would you do?
Hi, Paula. Edward here.
Hello. Hi, Edward.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Look, I think it's the right thing to do is to intervene on behalf of the partner who's got the speech impediment and try to help him with whatever he's trying to say, because I think it's a sensitive matter. That should not be, I mean, it's not bad for people to speak about him or her behind, or make fun of the situation.
Agreed. The only thing I would caution there, Edward, I learned this the hard way. So my son has a speech impediment. I learned this the hard way. Some individuals who have certain diverse abilities, not disabilities, diverse abilities, right? Like a speech impediment, wouldn't want you to speak on their behalf because they feel that you feel that they can't do it on their own. But if you're close to that person, they're cool with it, that's fine. But I do like what you said. These two coworkers should not be talking behind their back and addressing that situation as well as helping the coworker is great. Like it. Okay, I see another hand here.
Hi, Paula.
Hi.
I'm not sure if it's my turn. Hi, I'm Dironzo, and good to officially meet you. Have seen you virtually a couple of times. On the scenario, I would put forward just a thought in terms of those co-workers probably are not aware that this business partner has a speech impediment. And from my perspective, it would be to, I guess, address them to say, kindly give that business partner a bit more time and be patient for them to complete. And then, so to stress that point. Right. Yep. 100% agree. You and Edward I like it. You're going to the source of the issue, right? You're going to those two coworkers that are causing some of the issue. And to your point, I love what you said too. They may not be aware that is what is going on. So they don't know what's going on in this person's life. They may not be aware. So bringing that awareness up front is great. I like that. Yeah. Oh, and thanks for sharing that point that, sometimes people with impediments might actually have an issue with you kind of taking over them. So it's a nice learn to take home. Yeah, I learned that the hard way from my son, actually. So thanks for that. Yeah, I learned that the hard way. So I had to step back myself and be like, okay, I'm gonna let you get it out, let you talk. That was Mama Bear hitting a little bit, but I had to learn I need to step back and let him be. So yes, thank you both for sharing. Love it.
It's a pleasure, Paula.
What was that, Edward?
I'm saying it's a pleasure.
Yes. So this one is, oh my goodness, this is funny. Naturally, I'll avoid those two people like COVID. All right, avoidance. I can get, Lou, I can get behind that. Melissa said, do not comment on topic. Do not tell the person about the comments, but try to assist the person with his or her weakness. Okay. And then I agree with Durant's show. I would do the same. Okay, cool. So some things that you all hit it for this one. When you see or hear wrong, speak up. So you can speak up on either side of both people. You could, after the meeting, you could talk to your coworkers individually and explain why their conversation bothered you directly. I do believe our two brave souls that spoke up mentioned that. And though it may be uncomfortable, the awareness is necessary. So sometimes we have to be that how can I say it? That voice for those who may feel voiceless. So sometimes we do have to speak up for others and help them. And if the behavior continues, then you just need to escalate it and take it to your manager so that he or she could be aware of what's going on as well. Okay, here comes scenario 2. You are at a networking event where you have exposure to corporate and community leaders can help you achieve some of your professional and personal goals. You overhear some of them making derogatory comments about a young woman who's attending the event. The comments make you uncomfortable, and you can tell the young woman is uncomfortable as the individuals are looking at her with disgust, and she can figure out something is going on. What would you do in this situation? Take a moment to think. Again, you can write in the chat.
I think that's quite a difficult one. If say people that you know, like if it's someone I knew, I would probably talk to them. If I didn't know them, I actually don't know if I'd have the balls to actually confront them on it. But maybe I would in a diplomatic way if I felt strongly enough about it.
That's fair. I like that.
Yeah, I think so too. Like Laura says, I think, I'm trying to put myself in that situation, like in real life, and I was like those are situations that make me uncomfortable, and I almost, which is bad, you kind of pretend you didn't hear it, which is not great, I know. But sometimes, it's easier. But I guess, and it shouldn't really actually depend on the person if you know them or don't know them. You know what they're doing is wrong. So the good thing would be to, I think, directly address them, obviously, at some point, even though what it might mean is that, they're not going to help you achieve your personal goals. Or on the other hand, they might actually be so so impressed with the fact that you actually dared to address them about this and go, okay, this person I can work with.
That's probably a good thing though, Ruth, because then you know that's someone that you could work with as well. For me, that would be like integrity.
Hi, Paula. What I'd do, because I can see that the lady is feeling uncomfortable, and that could potentially lead to confrontation, if not on my side, because maybe I'm a bit too shy, but on her side, what I would do is maybe move her aside and just address the situation calmly and inform her that whatever views were shared by the others are not shared by myself. And I'm hoping that they'll be able to calm themselves if they want to address it with the two, and try to give them counseling and ways to address it in a way that's still going to be professional, because this is a professional setting. And then when we navigate back to the others, hopefully whatever decision they take, I'm not going to force them to do what they need to, whatever I suggest, but whatever decision they take, I'm hoping then it would be in a much calmer nature. They'll have really, taken some time out to process it all and then give a response that's not that they're not going to regret.
Yes, I like it. Thank you, Catella. And then I also see in the chat addressing them directly to be considerate and to have some respect. I like that. And I also see, as it is a networking event, I would introduce all to each other and indirectly engage. I like that strategy. I also see I would remind them of group rules and to respect each other. I love it. So yes, you all hit it, right? You can go talk to the young woman to show some empathy and to let her know that not everybody likes what is happening, the behavior, and you see it. You can address the group that is making the derogatory comments as well, as someone stated. You can get the names of the individuals and address them respectfully outside of the event, depending on the type of event that you're at. And then you can also determine if these are the type of individuals you even want to be in the presence of going forward. So this could have been an event that you went to and might have been your first time going to this event. And based on some of the behaviors and things that you're seeing, this may not be an event that you would want to take your time and resources to actually spend time with. In addition to those who said, if I know the individuals, I would feel more comfortable going up to them. That's something else I'll challenge you on. There's a lot of times when we don't know people and we see something being done wrong, and because we don't know them, we don't speak up. And sometimes that's at a detriment too, where we could have really made an impact. Now, safety is always important, so make sure your safety is intact and is good. But there's times where we sometimes will have to step out of that comfort zone and get uncomfortable for the good of the whole. And so sometimes we have to do that. And I've had to do that. And it's hard. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you it's easy. It's hard. And then you just wonder, did I just now have a perception on me that I shouldn't? But then when I go home and I look at myself in the mirror, I feel good that I did it. At least I made a difference. So again, it's a journey. You have to figure out where you are in the journey, and you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And sometimes being in some of these uncomfortable situations can allow you to go further on that journey. So thank you all for those who participated. I loved it. Let's move on to the next concept, which is around micro-inequities. So what is this thing called a micro-inequity? Well, it is a theory regarding ways in which individuals are either singled out, overlooked, ignored, or otherwise discounted based on an unchangeable characteristic such as race or gender. And you might have heard of micro-inequities, micro-aggressions, micro-affirmations, micro-advantages, all fall within the broader category of micro-messaging. Now, the thing that makes micro-inequities very interesting is that they can be subtle, meaning the micro-inequity can be very indirect or clever. You don't even realize it just happened to you because it's so small, it's so subtle. They can be verbal or nonverbal. So your body language can send a strong message, and even more strongly than words. I'm quite sure you all have heard that before. So it could be, you could actually say the micro-inequity, or your body language can convey the micro-inequity. They're generated by your unconscious mind. So you can perform, as I stated before, a micro-inequity unconsciously and not even realize you just did it. And the unconscious can include like repressed feelings, hidden memories, habits, thoughts, desires, reactions. And the memories and emotions can be too painful, embarrassing, shameful, or distressing. And so the unconscious mind is that reservoir, right, of those feelings, those thoughts, those urges, those memories that are outside of our conscious awareness. So it could be very unconscious. You don't even realize that you're doing it. Same with bias, which we'll talk about next. They can also convey small messages of prejudice. So remember, prejudice is a prejudgment. So the prejudgment on how you interact with people may result in a verbal or nonverbal micro-inequity. You may not even realize you're doing it. And often they're subconscious. So concerning the part of the mind which is not always fully aware, but which influences your actions and your feelings. So again, this is where you may not be aware of what you are doing and the impact those behaviors have on others. Now, what I found interesting when I was doing some research on this topic of micro-inequities is there was a study that was done by Gallup. And I found some interesting statistics in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion and how it relates back to micro-inequities. So one of the first things is that Gallup found that 24.7 million US workers, or 19%, are actively disengaged. And another 56% of those workers are not engaged at all, while only 25% of workers were actively engaged. So that results is 75% of workers are not fully engaged. And I think this study was done around like 2008. So it was done a while ago, but I wouldn't be surprised if this really hasn't changed. And then out of those actively disengaged employees, those that are fundamentally just disconnected from their jobs, that was costing the US economy between $292 to $355 billion a year for disengagement. And then what they found was causes, one notable cause to the disengagement at work was diversity-related incidents of disrespect. Where the micro-inequity is coming, right? So what is an example of a micro-inequity? So some examples are you ask somebody where they are from based on their parents. Now that might seem I'm just trying to find out where a person is from. I'm not, I don't have any prejudgment, discriminatory, but the way the other person might take it may not be the way you intended it to be taken. Or you might have really intended it to be sort of a discriminatory, stereotypical, or prejudiced response. Consistently being interrupted while you are talking. This irritates me to no end. This is a pet peeve of mine. But the message you're conveying there, subtly, is that what you're saying is not as important as what I got to say. So I'm going to cut you off because I'm more important and I have something to say. And what you had to say, I don't care about. Right? You may not think just by interrupting, that's the message you're conveying, but that could very well be the message you're conveying to the person you're interrupting. You make the statement, you are so articulate. You speak really well. I've had people say that to me before, who either heard me on the phone and then met me in person, and I shocked them because I was a Black African-American woman. And they'll say to me, you are very articulate. And my response is always, am I not supposed to be? Am I not? So is there something that makes you feel that I can't speak well or I shouldn't speak well? Right? Again, that little subtle micro inequity. Or here's a good one. When someone walks into your office and you say you are working on a piece of work or you are finishing up an email, opposed to you actually looking at the person who just walked into your office or acknowledging them, you are still writing up your email, you are still typing, and they're talking to you, but you're really not giving them your full attention. It's a micro inequity because they could be feeling right now that what they have to say, you don't feel it's important enough. Your email and what you're working on is more important than them. And so then they shut down and they either just walk out or they really just don't feel that they were heard and now they feel devalued. These little instances of body language, things we do when we interact with people, words we say can make such a huge difference to where it was costing potentially billions of dollars to the US because of active disengagement of employees. So how do you figure out if you have micro inequities? Well, there's actually a test out there. It's called the implicit association test. And it's done by Harvard University. And Project Implicit was a nonprofit organization, and they did international collaboration between researchers who were interested around thoughts and feelings outside of conscious awareness and control. Because remember, those micro inequities are on those unconscious things. And it was the goal of the project was to educate the public about hidden biases. This project was founded in 1998 by the three scientists you see pictured here: Tony Greenwald from the University of Washington, Mazaran Banaji from Harvard University, and Brian Nosek from the University of Virginia. And the test measured attitudes and beliefs that people were more unwilling or unable to report. So for example, you may believe that women and men should be equally associated with science, but your automatic association could show that you associate men with science more than you associate women with science. And this test is still out there. It is under, let's see, I don't know if I can copy and paste it, but there is a test. It's called the implicit test if you want to take it. And if you go to Harvard University's website, you can probably find it. Or if you just Google the Project Implicit, you will find it. And you can actually take it. It was free when I took it. You just take the test and you figure out where those micro inequities lie. It's a great way for you to understand how you interact with people, as well as identifying bias that you might have. And it's great, again, if you're in leadership. Most of us are working on projects, working with other individuals. It's a great way for you to understand why you might be having some tension with some stakeholders or some issues with some stakeholders, or why you just have issues on projects altogether. This could be a great way to identify some of the things, thank you, Ruth, some of the things that you do that can negatively impact. So how do you overcome these things? So once you identify them, how do you overcome the micro inequities that you have? Here are 5 areas that you can focus on today. You can just start understanding today. Understand the different types of biases that exist. And you're lucky because we are going to talk about that in the next session. I'm going to tell you some of the different biases that exist that you can see if you relate to or not. So understanding the different biases that exist. And then understand from that your biases, whether conscious and unconscious. Now, intercultural competence is the cultural self-understanding and understanding others' cultures. That's going to help as well. We're going to talk about that as well. But understanding your bias, whether conscious or unconscious, can help you overcome micro inequities, because a lot of times it's those prejudgments, it's those thoughts that you unconsciously have that is putting forth the micro inequities. Got to get out of your comfort zone and place yourself in situations where you are uncomfortable to help you grow and learn to eradicate those biases. We just talked about that. So start getting out of your comfort zone. Start having people hold you accountable for the things that you are doing. Hold yourself accountable for the things that you are doing. If you are the type of person who, when somebody walks into your office, you don't give them your full attention, make today the day you stop that, or you at least try to stop that and acknowledge that. And when somebody walks into your office or when you're on a phone call, you give that person the undivided attention so they feel valued. You want to replace negative mental images of target groups with positive mental images. So if there's certain groups that you have an issue with, be honest with yourself that you have that issue, and then replace the negative things with positive things. What's the positive about those individuals in that group? What are some great things that they're doing? Again, this is all about being honest with yourself. And then replace tolerant behaviors with acceptance and appreciation behaviors. So I've heard people say before, well, I'll just tolerate them, or I'll just tolerate this segment of people. I don't really think anybody wants to just be tolerated. And I don't think anybody wants you to tell them that they're being tolerated either. I do feel people want to be accepted and appreciated. So instead of doing tolerance, shift from those micro-inequities to micro-affirmations. Make it positive. It's shifting your negative to a positive. So here's an exercise that I want us to try really quick. Think about a time where you experienced a micro-inequity. How did it make you feel? What was your reaction to the situation? And what did you learn from that situation? Anyone can share. I'll take one person to share. I like that, Melissa. With multitasking, I've recognized that we do this micro-inequity at times, even in our social lives. 100% agree. I'm still guilty of it. I got to call myself out on it too. A great call out. Anybody want to share where they've experienced the micro-inequity? Just one person. How did it make you feel? What was your reaction? What did you learn from it? And if not, we can move on to bias. I'm cool with that too.
I think from my side, it's not, I'm sure I have experienced it many times, but I think like what I can get much better at is, just that where someone walks into your area of the office and I sit looking at my screen and that sort of thing, instead of giving them like they've come this way to come and see me, instead of like turning my chair around and facing them. That's what I'm guilty of, and that's something I could definitely, pay more attention to. Instead of carrying on tickling along on my keyboard, actually stop, turn around and say hello and give them my full attention. So it's more not how did it make me feel, I guess it's how I could have made them feel.
Awesome. 100% agree. We're all guilty of it. I've done it too. I do it with my kids, I realize too. I do it too. And I got to check myself on it because I'll be in my zone doing my thing. And then the message that you're pushing out isn't good for the other person. It's making them feel less than. And that's not really how you want anybody to feel. So thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. And thank you, Ruth, for putting the test in the chat. I appreciate you doing that as well.
I can share an incident that happened quite a few years ago where I did something and I didn't realize it at the time either. And I guess the person was extremely stressed as well. So it really was bad. I was doing exactly that. I was actually busy testing. And they came into my office and said they needed me to test something for their team urgently. And we had a rule where if you want me to test something and someone's already booked a slot with me, you need to go and fight it out with that other development team and come to some agreement and then come back and say, yes, they've agreed to swap out. And I think I was so involved with what I was busy testing and I was busy and I said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. You need to speak to the other developer and make an arrangement. Again, wasn't really looking at them, kind of had my back to the door where they were standing and it blew up to the point where I got called into my director's office. And I was actually shocked. I actually burst into tears because I was so upset that I'd upset them to the point that they'd actually gone and sort of escalated it to that point instead of speaking to me first. I think I was kind of hurt that they didn't come to me and say, listen, I didn't appreciate the way you handled that. And it was quite bad. So I learned a valuable lesson there.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. All right. Well, let's move over to bias. And I want to show you a video first, and then we'll get into a little bit of the conversation of bias. So hopefully this works like it's supposed to. Let's see.
No, I'm better than you in 2K. Bro, talk to Max. I've been playing for longer than you. What's good? I've been alive. What's good? What's good, bro? What's good? Play me tonight, bro. Play me tonight. What's good? That was seriously.
Monica. You made it.
Of course. I wouldn't miss our victory lunch. We worked our butts off on that project.
Right?
Am I the first?
Mm-hmm. Tim and Sonia just texted. They are on their way.
Great. I want to celebrate everyone's hard work on this project. You guys did such a good job. I really appreciate it.
You bet. I'm just glad we made it.
Can I get you something to drink?
Oh, just water for now. But you might want to tell your manager about those guys out front. Kind of intimidating. Maybe have the police move them along or something.
Sure. I'll talk to my manager.
Great.
What are you doing?
What?
Call the police? Over those kids outside?
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend anyone, but those kids can just hang out on some other street corner.
Oh, I see. You see the tall one out there? That's my son, Michael. We're going shopping for prom clothes right after we're done here.
God, I am so sorry. I just heard on the news that someone was mugged over here.
And you thought my son did it?
No, of course not. God, you don't think that
You know what I think? I think this celebration is over. Thanks.
Well, all right. So there was some bias going on in there, probably some prejudice, probably some discrimination, stereotyping, the whole 9 yards. So let's talk a little bit about what this thing called bias is about. So bias is a prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way that is deemed to be unfair. And biases may be held by an individual, group, or institution. It can have negative or positive consequences based on how you execute that bias. Now, there's two types of biases, main types of biases. There's a conscious bias, which is also known as the explicit bias. And that's where individuals are aware of their prejudice and attitudes towards certain groups. And then there's the unconscious bias, which is called the implicit bias, which we just talked about. And that's where we have attitudes towards people or associate stereotypes with them without our conscious knowledge. And that's where that project implicit test can come in as well. That can help you identify those biases that then can help you probably eradicate the micro-inequities. Now, there are many different types of biases out there. I'm just going to list off a few of them, and some of these you might resonate with. So the first one is the affinity bias. This is where you prefer someone that reminds you of you, which is very dangerous if you are a manager, because that means you're probably going to hire people that remind you of you, and you're not really going to get that diversity on the team. So you definitely want to appreciate the difference that other people bring to the table and ensure that you don't have this affinity bias, especially in some positions that you are in. Ageism is where you discriminate against someone based on their age. And I work with clients where I do career development, and that is one of the biggest things that I hear. For individuals who are over a certain age, they feel that they're going to be discriminated against when they apply for jobs because people are not going to want to hire them based on their age. And so then we have that whole conversation of how do you get around that bias and things of that nature. Again, something to think about if you are in HR or in the hiring. Attribution is where achievements and results are from luck and mistakes occur due to lack of skill. So this is not a good one either. You're pretty much saying anything you achieve, oh, that was just luck, and anything that you do wrong is because you lack skill. So you can't achieve anything because you have the skill, but you can definitely make mistakes if you don't have it. Beauty, you judge someone negatively based on their appearance or how attractive they are. Confirmation. This is a bias where you favor individuals that conform to the same beliefs that you hold, very similar to affinity. You want somebody who's like you. You really don't embrace that difference that much. You like to be around people just like you because that's where you're comfortable. You don't want to get into that uncomfortable stage. Conformity, you like it when social circle influences your perception of someone. So depending on the social circle that someone is in, that's going to influence how you deem that person. So that's not good as well, because that's when you're grouping everybody into one box or into one group. Contrast is a bias that arises from contrasting two entirely separate things. So this is like where people say you're comparing apples to oranges, that sort of thing. It's a bias where you just take two separate things and you just contrast them for no apparent reason, but it's just something that you do. A lot of times this can happen when you're trying to prove a point or you're trying to debate. You got the gender bias, where you judge someone negatively based on their gender. Halo and horns, this is another very common one, where you focus on one great attribute that a person has while ignoring all the other flaws. So think of it this way. A person did something that was really, really great, really, really spectacular. And that is the thing that stays in front of your mind. That's the halo that's over them. So from that point on, they can do no wrong, right? That is not a good bias to have either. It's a very common one, though. There's the name, where you judge someone negatively based on their name and their perceived background based on their name. And I've worked with many clients who've had to deal with this as well. Some people even change their name if they have a certain name that they feel people will discriminate against. They will change their name to be a more common name, which is unfortunate. And then you have weight, where you judge someone negatively because they are larger or heavier than average, whatever average is at this point. So these are some of the biases, some of the most common ones. These aren't all of them. There's a lot of biases out there. So these are some of the most common ones. And you might resonate with some of these. But if you find that you fit into some or all, or if you're lucky, none, that's great. But all of us at some point in time have an unconscious bias. And so how do you overcome your unconscious biases? So the lady in the video, she had a bias or a preconceived notion, a prejudice in the video based on, she felt that because those kids, now I don't know if it was just because they were young people. I don't know if they were because they were Black African-American males. I'm not sure. It could have been both, but because there were robberies and things that happened, she felt that they just needed to go somewhere else and play somewhere else because of what has happened in the past. Now, why does she feel either the young people or the Black African-American people needed to be the ones associated with the robberies and the burglaries and stuff that was happening? Don't know, but it could have been something that she dealt with in her life. And so she had that bias and she had that feeling of being uncomfortable. So some ways that you can overcome your unconscious bias is identifying your unconscious biases. So that circle I just gave you, identifying that, call out your biases when they happen. That doesn't mean you actually have to tell somebody about them. Call yourself out. Again, it's all internal, right? Call yourself out. Why do you feel the way you have? Understand the different biases that exist. And I see we have another one in here. Moral bias is also a big unconscious bias. Yes, it is. I'm quite sure there's some with religion, and there's so many. And what's interesting is biases change over time too, based on the environment you're in as well. So some biases pop up more strongly than others, depending on the environment that is occurring, that you are experiencing. So there could be some that can pop up that may be more rare, and then they come to the forefront because of the environment you're in. But that was a good ad. Thank you for that. List the ways that the biases, once you call yourself out and you understand them, list the ways the biases impact your behaviors. For her, she felt uncomfortable in that video because she felt that these young people were at some point that she felt that they were a risk, that they shouldn't have been there, that she felt that they could have done something, right? Why does she feel that way? And why is she behaving that way? And because of how she behaved, not knowing one of those young men was actually the child of one of her coworkers, that coworker now is probably going to look at her different, look at her cross-eyed, side-eye, or not even want to deal with her because of that particular behavior that she had. Identify an accountability partner to keep you honest on when you demonstrate unconscious bias. So sometimes we need other people to help us, like we talked about at the very beginning of getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, right? So identify somebody who can call you out on it, and you will take that out of love. Slow down your thinking and decision-making processes. So it forces you to step back and think and acknowledge your unconscious bias. Credibly challenge yourself. Build practices into your decision-making process to counter unconscious bias, especially if you are hiring people. As a hiring manager of over a decade, I used to see it all the time where people's biases would creep up. I actually only like to do panel interviews so that the other individuals would hold me accountable too if I had any bias that was creeping up. So if you're hiring people, or recommending people to help them in their career, it is really important you understand your bias and you check it, because that could actually impact someone gravely as they're trying to move forward in their career or any personal development that they have. Here's another video I want to show you. So this is what I want you to do with this video. This video has a lot of biases in it. There's a lot of different scenarios. So as you're watching this video, I want you to write down what you're seeing. There's going to be different scenarios. I want you to write down what you're seeing, and then we're going to have a quick group discussion. And because I know I'm coming up on time, we're going to have a quick group discussion, and then we're going to move into the last concept, which is intercultural competence. So check this video out, take some notes.
So, I heard you're about to have your first kid. Congratulations.
Yeah. It's a girl. We're thrilled. I'm a little nervous.
Don't be. You'll do great. Although the timing is a little unfortunate.
How so?
Well, we have a new job opening coming up, and I was thinking about recommending you, but I assume you'll want to switch to part-time as a new father. Okay, let's get started.
Bill, would you mind taking notes on the whiteboard? You have the loveliest handwriting.
Okay.
Good morning. I have a meeting with Erica Martinez. Oh, hey. Oh, it's great to see you again. I've been meaning to ask you to get in touch with my assistant to reschedule that meeting from last week. Oh, by the way, I'm so sorry. Are you Nadia or Danielle's assistant?
I'm your finance manager.
Okay, folks, big meeting is coming up tomorrow. How do you want to handle it?
I definitely think Isabel should be a part of it since she did all the analysis.
I think Maria should be there as well. It'll be a great chance for her to see what these kinds of meetings are like.
Makes sense to me. But this is beginning to feel like a big group. Bill, why don't you sit this one out? And that way we'll feel like less of a crowd.
This seems really important. I'd hate to miss out on something that can have a big impact on what we're doing.
Listen, Bill, we're going to need you to be more of a team player if you're going to be successful here.
He did a surprisingly good job on the numbers for the board. It was pretty complicated and math heavy, but he seemed to get it right away.
Well, great. Sounds like some real potential there.
Yeah, but he needs to be more assertive, more forceful. Sometimes he can come off as too soft and nice.
You know, a few others have mentioned something along those lines. I think I'm going to bring it up with him.
I wouldn't do that. He can be a little emotional, and sometimes his feelings get the best of him.
I'll find a way to work it in.
Okay.
Wow, 3 men on one team. This is pretty rare.
Well, we're all just really passionate and excited about the topic.
Really? I just wouldn't have guessed you guys would be interested in working on our new perfume launch.
I thought this would be a great way to get more experience in product marketing.
Yeah, and a huge opportunity to do some really creative work.
Of course, you know that's great. I'm glad you guys are here. Looking forward to the chit chat about the football and the sports cars and the planning meetings. Yeah, keep up the good work.
Are you okay? You seem a little stressed lately. Everything okay at home?
Actually, everything's fine. Why do you ask?
Well, it's just you seem a little disheveled lately. Normally you're so well put together and stylish. The stress of the job starting to get to you?
Nope, just trying to stay on top of these presentation deadlines we got coming up.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. That's a lot for you to handle on your own. If you want someone to take some of that workload off of you, Alicia works great under pressure.
Thanks for the offer. I got an email.
Hey, how you doing?
Excited about the party. Just feel bad about being so late, but I got stuck in traffic.
Oh, no worries. These office things, they never really start on time. So who are you here with?
Oh, my wife couldn't make it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed that you were one of the spouses, you know.
No, I work here. My wife doesn't.
Oh, that's nice.
All right. So really quick, what scenario stood out to you and why? Or have you ever experienced one of these scenarios? Or ever been the person who executed one of these scenarios? I'm interested to hear from at least one person, just some feedback on what you watched.
Paula, on my side, it's the conformity, you know, where they make you feel like you don't belong. You know, like that guy, he was not invited. He had to sit out one of their meetings because they felt he was, you know, he had to take it for a team. They didn't really need him, you know. You know, that bias, you know, that you can sit this one out. We should be okay.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, and I think another one, and maybe I might not have come up here exactly, but one that sort of happens often and considered like sort of in workplaces and things like that is like, you know, events that workplaces and that organize. They often, and from like, I guess from a diversity point of view, they often forget the diversity of the organization, the people you employed. Like, you know, you've got families and stuff where nighttime events or whatever aren't good for families and things like that. And I mean, I've often haven't been able to go to events because I've got family commitments and things in the evening. So that's, yeah, I've had that before where like people said, oh, you didn't come. And I was like, well, no, it's not that I didn't want to come, but you know, you start to get left out of those things, and you see people forming relationships, all the single and the people who don't have families yet. You kind of feel excluded from that because they all seem to have got these relationships, and now you that outsider because you're the family person who can't attend the social gatherings.
Right. Agreed. Thank you for sharing that. And I see in the chat also from Lucy, experienced something similar, assuming the older person in the meeting is the more senior person. Oops, agreed. And Cecilia, the first one where I had a male manager who was against starting a family because he was so worried about projects. Yeah, it's unfortunate that people feel that they have these limitations on what they can do based on other people's bias or how other people perceive them, right? So thank you all for sharing. Yes, all of those are very true. The first time I saw this, I was like, wow, these things actually still happen. And they really, really do. These are really, really true scenarios that happen to people. And so the goal and the point of showing that video was we have to really be careful on the words that we use and how we make people feel as we are doing that, because it can have quite a dire consequence on what we really want to convey or what we really was trying to do. That gentleman, the manager, assuming he was going to have to go work part-time because of his first child, was just thinking you probably want to spend time with your family. You probably want to spend time with your newborn, not knowing that what he was saying was put the other person off quite a bit. So he might have had good intention, but it definitely didn't come off that way. Which kind of leads me into the next topic and our last topic of intercultural competence. And then I'll be able to take some questions here first. But Dr. Mitchell Hammer had created this core IDI concept. And essentially, his reason behind it is he feels as understanding culture is the foundation, the starting point for everything for all intercultural efforts. It is the most difficult concept to find widespread agreement on, yet it is central to everything. And that is Dr. Mitchell Hammer, who created the IDI. I am actually a licensed IDI administrator. There's a test that you can take, an IDI test, to understand your intercultural competence, how you perceive it, and how you really are based on how you answer the questions. But the cool thing about this concept that I really like is taking understanding cultural differences differently. It's taking it from staying on the surface of just understanding how cultures are in regards to dance, food, language, arts, to being more subjective, really getting below the surface and understanding the perceptions, the beliefs, their values, the behaviors, social expectations. And that's really important because that can really help you understand how you interact with people and how you get to know people, especially in the roles that we do as business analysts and on many different sort of roles that you might play on the project. You're interacting with people, and people behave and react and believe certain ways. So if you can understand and get an appreciation of getting deeper in understanding cultural difference and not just staying at the surface, it has a huge impact. And so the concept of intercultural competence is it takes the who, which is the diversity, the mix of differences, which focuses on the impact and embracing difference. And this is typically measured by demographic analysis. So it takes the who, the mix of those differences. It adds in the what, which is the mix of feeling valued and engaged. And that is really the focus on the experience that people are having. So it takes the who and the what and it puts it together. It's the how. The intercultural competence is the bridge. Think about it. If you embrace somebody's difference and you really get to understand below the surface how that culture is made up, how their belief system works, how the social behaviors work, the impact you can have to helping them feel more included and valued in your organization is phenomenal. Because you're not just staying on the surface anymore, you're getting deeper. And not only are you understanding others' cultures, but you're also understanding your own culture as well. You're getting that deeper level. Now, most of us understand our culture relatively well, but there's always things to learn, right? But you understand it to a point. So imagine when people get to know you, get to know your culture, get to know who you are, how that makes you feel. And if you take that same time and get to know other people and get to know why they react the ways they do, why they behave the ways they do, you're building that bridge because you're taking the time to understand the how. So you're taking the who and the how, and you're getting that inclusion, which is the real important part of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is making sure people feel valued and feel engaged, and you focus on the experience that people have. That's why understanding your micro-inequities, understanding your unconscious and your conscious biases, understanding how to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations will help to build and foster that inclusive environment that you want to work in. And I'm quite sure the people around you want to work in as well. Do you want to know more about intercultural competence and what I do in this space? Definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll have my information come up here shortly, but I am very passionate in this space because I love to see the aha moments and I love to see people grow in this space. But as I'm coming close to time here, and I do want to leave some time for questions, I just want to wrap up really quick. We learned, I hope that what we learned today, you'll be able to implement, and you can take it and implement it starting, well, it's evening for you all, so maybe starting tomorrow, because it is kind of evening, so I doubt you're going to be doing any more work. You shouldn't be anyway, but I doubt you'll be doing any more work. But just implementing what you learned today, the acknowledgement, doing the self-introspective is the first step in positively influencing behaviors and relationships at work. It's the first step in making you understand you and being that difference. So it's being the difference that can make the difference, right? So you are going to be that difference. You're going to be that role model. You're going to be that example that people will watch and they'll see how you interact. And then while people are watching you and seeing the results you get from that, that will help drive the difference that you want to see holistically in your interactions, whether personally or professionally. Make sure that your words and actions align. That's one of the things that I've seen where it's been consequences haven't been that great and it has some negative impact is when your words and actions don't align. So don't speak diversity, equity, and inclusion, but don't act out on it. They need to align. People need to see that difference. Make sure you watch your behaviors. So watch your micro-inequities, watch your unconscious biases. and watch those biases, whether they are conscious or unconscious. So if you know you have some conscious biases, do your self-introspection, eradicate those, especially if it's causing a lot of negative influence, and then make sure you check yourself when those unconscious biases come up. And I want to leave you with this quote because Maya Angelou said it the best. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will not forget how you made them feel. So with that, I'm going to open up for questions. Here's all my contact information that you have, but I want to open up these last 4 minutes for any questions or comments. I hope you enjoyed the masterclass. I know I threw a lot at you, but I wanted to give you a lot to think about and a lot of different tools and techniques. So I hope you enjoyed. And at this point, Ruth, I guess I'll turn it over to you to facilitate any questions that might be out there.
Yes, or otherwise, participants feel free to, I think Laura's made it so you can unmute yourself. So yeah, you don't have to post it in the chat. You can simply ask Paula directly.
Yes. Hi, Paula. I just want to find out, sometimes there's a subtle difference between unconscious bias and preference. You see it in workshops. Let's say it's a break during a workshop, and then you see Black people clubbing together and white people clubbing together during a break. Would you call that bias or a preference? I'd prefer to hang with the people I can speak my home language with, or people who understand my background.
I would say
how
it
would you
depends.
classify?
Yeah, it could be both. It could depend. It could be that you have an affinity bias because you're just comfortable with people who are like you, and you just want to be around people who are like you. You don't want to venture out and get out of that comfort zone and get to know people who aren't like you, who could also appreciate the culture and the difference that you bring. It could also be preference. It could be when you're at a conference or a networking event, you might want to get with people that you went there with, or people that to say, hey, I was just in this session and this session was really great. I always see that at conferences where people tend to stick with either their coworkers or stick with people that they know. The value of going to conferences, though, is really getting out of that and networking with people you don't know, because you never know what that networking experience might afford you in the future. So what I would say to you is you really have to dig within. Are you doing it because you just feel more comfortable and you have that affinity bias where you just want to be around people who are like you? Or are you doing it because you have something to share with this group of people, but in other ways, you are in other areas of the conference or in other ways outside of the conference, you do make it a point to get outside of that comfort zone and interact with other people? Because if you don't make a conscious effort to do that, there's a possibility you're missing out on some great interactions that you can have. I hope that answered your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right.
So Ruth says, I am sometimes guilty of that conference affinity bias and my introvert self. I hear that a lot with introverts, that it's really hard for them to get outside of that shell when they're in networking environments, or they actually don't even like to network. But again, think of it this way: pain and pleasure. What pain could you potentially be inflicting on yourself by not getting out of that comfort zone? What limiting beliefs, what limits could you be putting on yourself versus if you just broke out of that for just maybe one session and met somebody or talked to somebody that you didn't know? What sort of experience, what sort of pleasure could that bring you in the future? And I'm gonna be honest with you all as well. When I'm at conferences, I put so much into speaking that a lot of times after I'm done speaking, I don't want to be bothered with anyone. I'm so tired. I'm drained, right? I'm drained from speaking. But I feel that if I don't, I'm losing out on great opportunities there to build some cool relationships and to learn about people. So I push myself out of that as well. So it's something that I have to work on too.
Hey, Paula, can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
How are you? It's so good to have
Is this my friend Deb or no?
It is me. Thank you so much for the session. It's so enlightening as always. I just want to ask this question about affinity bias. I've worked in an environment where let's talk about, race now.
Okay.
It didn't matter at all. In fact, the last thing you notice is anybody's color or, affinity in terms of race and all of that. But now I also work in an environment where it is very, very clear. This affinity bias kind of a thing. At every gathering, you would see the black, mingling with the black, and you would see the white mingling with the white. I think it's also a language thing where people prefer to speak. So the white speak Afrikaans and the black, most of them are foreigners from Zimbabwe speaking their local language. So what you find out is for someone like me, with a global mindset, I struggle to fit anywhere because I do not, you get a kind of a thing, I'm black on the outside but white in the inside. So I struggle to really fit anywhere. So how do you really make a difference in a setting, in a work environment where people kind of are settled in this kind of affinity bias, relating with people from their races, and you just want to be the difference in that kind of environment?
This is a great question. Great question. Okay, so first thing about you not fitting in anywhere. Maybe, how can I say it? Maybe you're not supposed to. Maybe that's the beauty of it. So I'm not the type of person, I actually can relate to you so well because I don't do clicks. I don't do any of that. I don't fit into that stuff. I'm sort of like a chameleon. I'm all over the place. Depending on who I'm interacting with, I can interact with the person. But that's the beauty and the power you have, Deb, is because you can actually be that bridge to bring people to get out of affinity to where there's more inclusivity. And you can just be that example doing it. So for example, let's say you go to a networking event where you do see that there are these segments or groups of people that are around each other because of commonality of language or things of that nature. And let's say you know people in both segments. You can start to intermingle with them. You could actually take one of them over to the other segment and say, hey, I want to introduce you to this person. And this is why. You can actually start being that person that's helping to make the change. And that's probably why you feel that you don't fit in, because you're not supposed to. You're supposed to be that bridge that's supposed to help people understand, we all have our difference, but that's the beauty of it. That's the and let me show you how you can interact with this person, or this person can interact with that person. And you're probably that person that's supposed to be the bridge, because all of us have different purpose in life. Don't get me into the life coaching now. All of us have different purpose in life. And sometimes your purpose is not to fit in. You're not supposed to, because of what your purpose is. You can't, because if you did, it would take away from what you've been called to do. So that's it. That's what I would say to you. You probably feel that way because you're not supposed to. And so if there's a way that you can be that person to help these groups get together, I would say be that person.
Wow. Thank you so much, Paula. That's so deep. Thank you. I'm grateful.
You are welcome. I'm open to taking some more questions. I know we're over, but I'm cool. So if there's any other questions out there, I don't want anybody who has a question not to be able to ask it.
Hi, Paula. Dironto again. Thanks for staying over time for a bit.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks so much for this session. I guess, I just have a question on getting your perspective on what do you say to those that advise, I guess, the subject of your session today, anything diversity management, kind of bias or culture management in organizations is typically an HR thing. So we can't really, take it on ourselves. So what do you say to those in the organizations? It should be like an HR thing.
Yeah. So, and there are many organizations that are like that. Sometimes you have to start within your own group. So if there's an interest in your group, like in let's say you have team meetings or town halls or staff meetings where they're looking for agenda items. And let's say there's a topic around diversity that comes up that you really want to share, really want to have a conversation about. That's one way to bring awareness to it without having to go global across the entire company, but start small. Sometimes you have to start small and then the word gets out and then it builds. And that's just as powerful. There are just some individuals who just don't feel diversity, equity, and inclusion need to be a topic focused on. So sometimes you have to be that change that you want to see. So you actually have to take it upon yourself to demonstrate, just like you pilot a a solution or an idea that you feel the company should take on, and you pilot it and you show them the benefit of how it will benefit them from a profit perspective, a customer perspective, the internal team perspective. Sometimes you have to do the same with DE&I. And so when it comes to DE&I, if you can start small and just starting to have conversations within your own team, or even just bringing up stuff with a coworker and just having that conversation. And then that coworker says, oh, I had this great conversation, and now they want to bring it further. It's those little seeds that you sow that can reap a huge harvest at the end. So sometimes you have to start small. You're not going to get it totally from the top. Now, in order for DE&I to really work for an organization, you have to have support from the top. It's got to come down from the top. But if you just want to show the importance of it and why there should be a focus on it, I would say start within your own internal team, or just start having conversations with coworkers or stakeholders yourself to show the benefit of it. And hopefully there'll be a domino effect, a ripple effect on why it's important to have these conversations and the benefit of having these conversations are.
Great suggestion. Thank you. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Ruth, do we have any other questions out there?
I don't see any in the chat. No, just lots of thank yous and awesome sessions in the chat. So yeah, lots of people really appreciated today's session. So yeah, thank you very much, Paula. But yeah, all your details are there. So those who want any further questions, yeah, Paula's details are there. So I'm sure you've taken them down by now, as everybody might have. But yeah, if there are no other questions, I think we'll bring today's session to an end. And yeah, just to thank you very much from the IIBA South Africa side, and specifically the Durban region today. Paula, thank you very much for that session. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that we can learn tonight and today. And yeah, how to be better and make us, stand out in the workplace. So really, really awesome session. I echo all the chats there too that have really enjoyed today's session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you want the Ruth, if you want the deck, let me know. I'm willing to share the deck.
Awesome.
That has
Thank
the information
you.
in it. So just let
I'm
me
sure
know.
there will definitely be people who will be asking for that, Paula. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. And yeah, thank you for taking your time today. Yeah, still lots of great thank yous coming through. So yes, great session today. Thank you very much, everybody. And big thanks to you, Paula.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Yes,
Thank you, bye.
Paula, you too.
Cheers. All right.